Welcome, everyone, to another episode of To the Sky, because that is our goal. Our goal is to the sky. And with me today, I have a very special guest, a person that I have been spending my life with for like the last 2 years now. I would like to introduce Joel Hamilton. And
Hi.
Joel, can you introduce a little bit about yourself to the people?
Yes. Hi. Yeah, I'm Joel. I'm a software developer at Fusion Networks, which is where Franz works, and I've worked with him since he was my intern, and he's now a junior in the team.
Hooray! But today is actually quite a different episode. We're not gonna be focusing on Joel's day job. I found out that Joel actually manages a bunch of charities, right? And that is our goal today is to discuss his journey in that space.
Yeah. So I don't manage them. It's
Mm.
at the governance level.
Sorry,
So
yeah.
I'm on the board of my church's charity, and then through that I got the opportunity to be on the board of a new collective impact community based charity.
Mm.
So those two charities are Tamaki Community Development Trust, or TCDT for short, and Te Hoe or Tamaki.
That's pretty cool. When I found this out, I really wanted to kind of dive deep in this area. It's something that I guess, quite unfamiliar with, and I think it'd be a good idea to even to spread knowledge of this charity and I guess to discuss charity more in general. But before we go further into that, one of my favorite thing to ask on this series is, are you always learning, Joel?
Absolutely. Um, so we'll get to hobbies and stuff a bit
Yep.
later, but and one of my many hobbies is around education. I I fall down Wikipedia rabbit holes looking up all sorts of information. I also am a little bit involved with more the technology side of it, but education improvement
Yeah.
and things like that. So yeah, that whole lifelong learning journey is absolutely something I buy into wholesale.
Yeah, that's probably one of the reason that I really enjoy speaking with Joel because even from day to day things, there's always something new that he brings to the table. Particularly in the educational space, which is something that I've experienced, I guess, firsthand. Some bits of it from the country where I come from, the Philippines, and some of it here. And I guess the thing that I'm quite interested about what Joel says is revolves around his I guess expectation or understanding that education can be wrong sometimes, which is something completely foreign to me. Or
Uh,
or there
uh,
are other ways, sorry, maybe not incorrect, but there are other ways of teaching things as opposed to just one way of approaching education. I think that's a better way to put it.
yeah, so there's two aspects to that, I think. Well, from my point of view, anyway.
Mm.
So the first one is I believe authority should always be questioned and should have to um, it should have to have a reason for existing and having that power over a domain or over a people or whatever. There needs to be a reason for that, or else why do we give that thing the authority? Um, so that's the first thing, and that's very much a cultural difference between the two of
Yep.
us.
Yep.
Um, and then the second thing is I am a undiagnosed dyslexic. So I went through my education with significant difficulties in learning how to read until I had intervention of reading recovery. So I went through that program, which without that I would probably not be able to read today. And I still have significant difficulties with writing. It takes a lot of energy for me to even write sort of medium length emails. My spelling is horrible, but my ideas are there and how I can
Mm.
construct ideas is still there. I just don't think in words. And because of that, my journey through education has been difficult. it meant I sort of stepped back from um, English or history or those essay-based topics, and I tried to get away from them as soon as possible through my schooling. However, the information in those subjects and learning about the different things that are there to learn, I was still interested in. It was just the examination and the way in which that education didn't work for me. So I'd always prefer a short answer question. I'd always prefer an equation. I also really need to know why.
Yeah.
I can't just learn a thing. I need to know why, and I need to be able to figure it out for myself from first principles.
I think my favorite example of you saying that you need to understand it is when you were talking about simple harmonic motion and how it all relates back to a circle, right? Like that was the big revelation for you, and it became so much easier to visualize it that way for you, right?
Yeah, so that was learning the whole Sokotoa stuff with
Yep.
trigonometry.
Yep.
I didn't understand that until I'd done simple harmonic motion in physics and saw it all played out in a circle.
Yeah.
And then it all made sense to me. I'm like, oh, okay, of course.
That's pretty good. And how do you feel about, I guess, your dyslexia? I mean, it's not something that you hide on a day-to-day basis, right? Or you try to hide, but how do you kind of cope and deal with that, I guess?
So where it pops up the most is my spelling mistakes, which I have all the time and has been a point of embarrassment for me for my life, throughout my life. If I wasn't doing all my work on a keyboard and I was writing with pen to paper, nobody would be able to read what my writing is, including me, most of the time. My handwriting is atrocious. That was also always a problem through schooling. Other than that, because I have learned how to read and I've developed techniques for how to skim read, to be able to find the piece of information I need to find. With my work and what I do now, a lot of what I read is manuals, and I'm looking for a piece of information.
Yep.
And I kind of know roughly what I'm looking for, or I'm scanning through code looking for where the bugs are introduced or whatever. And how I can do that scanning, it's not reading, it's something else, and I don't quite know how to explain it properly, but it's not the same process as reading. Actual reading, I sub-vocalize, so it's like reading out loud to myself. However, if I'm reading out loud, I'm quite likely going to make mistakes. I will read a synonym of a word, all sorts of weird things with that. I will read a wrong word, but I will understand the word that was actually there. Like all sorts of weird things like that happens. It's all very jumbled at times. I think it's allowed me to have perspective, or be able to be open to taking different perspectives with things and with problems. And I think it also has helped me in my career with jumping quickly between different levels of abstraction.
No, I mean, I am very, very grateful for you sharing your experience. It's it's something that we frequently discuss. Is we speak about different perspective. Very easy to say. It's something that I struggle quite a bit. Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's very, very, very useful. I guess let's go back to I guess the main point of our meeting today. So can you explain the functions of the charity that you say that you are a part of? What are their
Right.
goals, and how do they help the community if it's a community based
Yes.
charities?
Yeah. So I'll start off with TCDT. So that's the church charity. So that's my local church that I go to in the community. It's just a normal community church. It's there. Its members are people from the community. It works to serve the community, and out of that, it was recognised a need in the community for wraparound social support. And so the members of the church worked to figure out how to set up a way to provide that wraparound support. And Tamaki Community Development Trust came out of that. And so what we have a bunch of social workers, and they tend to work with family units or with children, because we've got strong connections with the schools. And they'll do all sorts of things like help with issues with Housing New Zealand, or actually TRC now, and all sorts of things like that. So it's the more long-term approach, because it's been recognised for a while that the government's approach of here is a sort of 1 month, 2 month intervention, and here's a check to be able to have this intervention with this family doesn't work in this situation in GI, PAM, that Point England, that sort of area, with those families. And so that long-term wraparound support where they're able to look after, so one kid's playing up at school, so they come on, and then we work with that kid, but we're actually working with the whole family, and then that kid's doing better, but the other, like the next kid is having issues or whatever. And so there's lots of things like helping train the parents, helping with nutrition is always a thing, helping with aspects around mental health and counselling, helping with if they, for example, a big problem at the moment has been kids going to school, just getting them out of the house and going to school, because there's become more of a trend of them staying up late playing Fortnite or PUBG or whatever and not wanting to go to school, particularly the more teenager age. And so we'll do things like help the parents put systems in place as to how to make that go more smoothly, set them up for success. So basic things like if they don't have an alarm clock, buy them an alarm clock. Talk with them, work with them to figure out, hey, let's put a time where we'll turn the device off and go to bed at night, and just work together to come to that. That's the other thing. It's always working with. It's never telling or doing to the families, because that working with is where the success comes. And if it's we know best and telling them what to do, that doesn't tend to go too well. And that's been the approach of various people in various agencies in the past, and that hasn't had the success that we've seen.
So I kind of want to take a moment when you mentioned that you work with people and it's not focused on telling people what to do or telling successful people what successful people telling not successful people what to do, right? Because I kind of resonate with that idea, particularly because how easy is it to accept, let's say, Elon Musk's recommendation to study hard, study physics, get a degree, do this, do all that, and then will you become the next Elon Musk, but by just working hard? That's why I like this idea of people who are down here being able to share their own experiences and their own journey, provides a lot more validation, and I think it provides a much more sincere way of what they're talking about.
Yeah, also they know their context, and context has so much to do with all of this kind of stuff. And without that context, it's so easy to get things wrong.
Yeah.
And so the advice you're giving can be incredibly wrong if you just come in being like, I've got all the solutions here.
Yeah.
You're gonna have missed stuff, and it's just not gonna work out. And also there's you need to not be detracting from people's mana. You need to be giving them the respect that they need. And even when they're in a place where things are difficult and things are hard, and maybe they don't even think they are deserving of that respect, that's actually when they need it the most.
I 100% agree. Maybe it is difficult for me to see that, but I do recognize that across all form of life, across all form of social standing, there should always be that level of respect, you know, because at the end of the day is how we treat other people is, I think, really what we mean to the world, because it's how we interact with people leaves the greatest amount of impact. I think if it's tasteful or distasteful, that's where we'll just go wrong or go right.
Yeah, and so that's the thing I've been thinking about in recent years is the power of community,
Hmm.
because a community will last longer than you or I will. Communities last longer than companies. Communities can last many, many generations, hundreds,
Yep.
thousands of years. And so being part of a community means you're part of this much bigger thing. I think always feeling, being, making sure you're humbling yourself to that is important.
No, that's wonderful insight. I kind of want to ask, why or how did you get into this? What brought you in this kind of charity area as opposed to, sports or any other things?
So I've always had a fair bit of a social conscience. Um, I was invited along to a board meeting to see whether it would be a thing I'd be interested in. I thought it would be great to learn about how to do governance, and it would be great to learn more about the community I'm in, or neighbour to at the moment. Um, and so yeah, I was invited to join the board of TCDT, and yeah, I saw it as a good opportunity to learn a bunch of stuff at first, and then as I've stayed on there, I've seen the good that it's done and the bad that it stopped, um, and then more recently, I've had the opportunity to start this new charity, Te Hoe or Tamaki, which sorry I didn't get into yet.
Mm,
Um,
that's okay.
so that is a, how do I put this? It's kind of a long story. I'll try not to make it too long.
That's okay. As long as
I'll
we can
try
work on your
and
time.
I'll try and explain it. So that the Tamaki area, so GI, Panmure, Point England, all that sort of area there, is an area where a lot of people in the past were moved to, and they
Mm,
were placed there, and it's historically been a large state housing area. Now, during the previous Labor government, the government had started working on plans on how to make the population density higher there, so they'd sell off a block of 3 state houses and then put, I don't know, however many, like 9 houses on there, and they would still retain 3 state houses in that 9, but they'd have it mixed with other housing as well,
right.
so it wouldn't cost the taxpayer anything. So vaguely, that's kind of what the plan was there, and that's what the Tamaki regeneration is about. So that starts. There's the election, and the national government gets in, and all the people who had done all the planning for
That's
that
good.
process get changed,
Yep.
because new government, you change the all the workers, is what evidently tends to happen with that election cycle. And so they come partway through a process, and they see the process, they see that it's good, it's good on the books, it's not going to cost anything, it's going to be great. And so they go head down and get to it. But what that meant was the community had massive, massive disruption all these people being turfed out of their state homes that they've been in for years and years and years, and they're living next door to their relatives who are also in another state home, and they're getting sent all over the place into a state house in South Auckland or West Auckland or all over the place. So this was all happening, and then there was significant protests, and it was recognised that what was happening wasn't really all that good. And so the national government decided to put in place, I think that's how it went, TRC, so Tamaki Regeneration Company. And so what they would be is basically an arm of the government that does everything from Housing New Zealand, Ministry of Social Development, all that kind of stuff would be there located in the community to be able to serve all the roles that does there, and to make sure that this regeneration, this rebuild, this adding way more houses into this area would be successful. And they were able to do a much better, to improve things significantly.
Okay.
Which was good. And so they've been on an incredible journey. And part of that journey ended up being that they needed a way to help families that were struggling, that were going into these new houses. And their original plan is they would go one by one, fixing each of these households. And as we were saying before, that's not really a successful way of doing things, but that's what their initial plan was. So they came up with this plan, and they sent out a request to get practitioners to be able to implement what their plan was. So they would pay for people to go and so they would pay the money, and people would go in and fix these families, is what their plan was. So that became, Taamaki Community Development Trust, GI Family Centre, and Ruapōtaka Marae came together to form Te Hoe o Taamaki and put in a proposal for that contract and won it. Well, sorry, let me go back a step. So the manager for Tamaki Community Development Trust, manager from GI Family Centre, and the manager for Ruapōtaka Marae worked together on that with the approval of their individual boards to put forward this proposal. They won it, and then it was decided we should probably come together into a single group to be able to deal with all of this, and that's where Te Hoe o Taamaki comes in. So that's what we formed all together, and so that board, so that's now a registered charity that has a board, which I am the chair of.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Which has been a crazy amount of work, way more than I thought I had bitten off. So that's two representatives from each of the member organisations' boards. That journey of the plan of that contract, going around fixing each family one by one, we as Te Hoe o Taamaki thought that's not really going to work that well, but we can take the money, deliver what they're asking us to, and do a better job of it anyway, and be sort of an adapter to do what's really needed. And we'd get this extra resource and this extra money to provide for these families. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So when COVID hit, we very quickly scrambled together, working with TRC, and put together essentially a food bank and food distribution unit.
Wow, that's awesome.
And delivered, I don't know the numbers, but thousands and thousands of food and cleaning packages to families in the community. That experience has woken or opened TRC's eyes to how we work in Tamaki, because this is the thing that shocked them, and it's just what we've always done. the people who needed the food were also families that were able to help deliver the food and able to help do the logistics and work on it and do all of that. So when I say we partner with our families, it's real partnership. They work with us to help other families and help themselves and all the rest of it. And they saw that and have recognized now that this partnership model is a lot more powerful and can do a lot more. And it's really, really great. And now we are in discussions with them, figuring out what comes next. They have decided that, and we agree with them, that I should probably go back another step. So, Te Hoe Tamaki has always in the back of our minds, some members more in the front of their minds, have seen things at more of a longer term. So TRC has an expiration date on it.
Oh, it does.
They're only going to be in the community for a certain amount of time and then they're gone. So we saw this as an opportunity to build capacity within the community. So when TRC goes, the community is still good and still able to do what it needs and still able to help those that need the help and all the rest of that.
Right.
And so TRC is now more on board with that, and we're looking at ways on how to accelerate that journey and be able to, so work in a more true partnership with government with that. So it's the buzzword around that kind of thing is it's a collective impact. And so there's still a bit of working out roles and responsibilities and reporting lines and all the rest of that kind of thing, but we're still working through that. And at the same time, we're already delivering things. So it's a little bit cart before the horse in terms of getting the governance stuff all lined up and then getting things operational, because we've already got stuff operational because we're all doers. So there's been a bit of difficulty with that. Difficulty is probably fair to say, but it's always been in high trust and with a willingness to work together. And yeah, it's a lot of good's already been done, and a lot of good is gonna come out of it. I'm sure.
One of the thing that like really struck me when you were telling me a little bit about this is how you focus on that partnership aspect between you and the community. It's something that I never even thought of as an approach in terms of healing a community or trying to approach this, because like what I previously mentioned, I thought it was more of a one-way approach, right? You got these people who's just giving and telling them how they should do things, and it's, I don't know, because it's, I guess from what you mentioned, it's from like your experience and how you were already doing it that you saw how to approach this, right?
So my experience of I'm not actually out there doing any of this stuff really. It's our amazing workers, it's our amazing people, and I've had the benefit to come in and see this working from the get-go, and with TCDT. So I've come in and I've seen that, and then I was, as we've partnered with Ruapotaka and GI Family Centre, seeing that they work in a similar way. Right. We were then able to see, yes, we can come together and we can group together, because how we do this stuff is pretty much the same. We have the same sort of attitude. We see this works and we like doing it this way, and the community likes doing it that way, and they like us for it. So those partnerships are incredibly helpful, incredibly beneficial, and in my opinion, the best way to do it. It's kind of like the whole feed a man give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Well,
that's hard.
If the community's there, like if you need be delivering these bits and pieces, or you need to be helping people in this way. And there's people there who are willing to help,
Yep.
interested and willing to help. Why not include them?
Yep. That's probably
Um,
the big one is the inclusivity. Yep.
yeah. And I mean, I guess when there's a little, there can be some downsides to it, kind of like when you were my intern, where I would have to spend a bit more time fixing up little mistakes here and there, or
Yep.
explaining details that seem completely obvious to me,
Yep.
or that kind of thing. So there is more effort, is probably the way, and you need to put systems in place to make sure things don't end up going wrong.
Right.
Um, but like even in the medium term, it pays off. Like maybe in the short term, it's not the fastest way to get the thing done, but in the medium term, like I was very quickly able to let you just go away and do
Yeah.
stuff and then come back to me if you had an issue. It's the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, when given the opportunity, people can do amazing stuff, and you just really need to get out of their way most of the time.
Is that that trust? I know it's hard to trust somebody, probably you met for the first time. That's probably the biggest part of it. You don't know that person that very well, but I mean, I thank you very much for all the support and help that you helped me, navigate becoming a better developer today. I mean, it's absolutely invaluable, and I don't absolutely take that for granted. It was absolutely wonderful that I had the runway for me to explore, and then come back for you and be able to ask for help with, and I hope that wasn't too much of an issue when that was happening. Yeah, like the last couple of days, I'm very very thankful that we were tackling the asynchronous stuff, and I'm still happy that you were still helping me understand that. I mean, it was quite a different way of, like, thinking of a flow of program for me, but it was it was very rewarding. Like, like you always said, the speed is always very different.
Yeah, well, like that async await stuff,
Yeah.
I only really learnt that myself by doing it,
Yep.
or maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when I started using it.
All right. I guess just before we move on to the next part, I would kind of like, if you can, translate the name of your the charity that you're a part of, or explain the names like TCDP, TCDT.
TCDT, so
So,
Tamaki Community Development Trust.
all right. Okay. Yep.
So, so Tamaki Makaurau is sort of the Maori name for Auckland, and
Okay. Tamaki
Tamaki
Makoro.
Makaurau.
Makoro.
Got to
Okay.
roll. I'm saying it wrong, and you're saying it worse.
Oh,
Sorry.
oh no.
And then so Tamaki is basically from Mount Wellington to the estuary. Like there's a section of land which is recognised as Tamaki, and Tamaki Makaurau, I believe, is the Auckland Isthmus, so that central Auckland area.
Okay.
So then Te Hoe or Tamaki is the paddle of Tamaki.
Ah, really?
Yeah, so the Hoe is the paddle. So
That's pretty cool. Thanks.
the so when Eli came up with that name, he was like, "Look, there's a bunch of different people from different backgrounds here, but what brings us all together is we all got here to New Zealand with a paddle."
That's pretty
So
cool.
that was the first part of it, and then we've kind of extended that metaphor into more of waka ama, and uh, so in a waka, in a racing canoe, you have different people with different roles, and pretty much everyone has a hoy, has a paddle. So one person might have a special hoy at the back, and that's used for steering. Other people have their hoy and they're paddling away, and they're the powerhouse. Someone else in the middle will be directing people, saying where to go, and someone else will be doing the timing and all of that. So Te Hoe o Tamaki means with the paddle, with the tool, you need to be grasped, we
Yeah.
need to be used, we need to fly across the water. It's kind of the imagery we're going for there. That's one thing I haven't mentioned. So Te Hoe or Tamaki, we are very focused in Maori culture. So everything we do, we endeavour to do through a Maori framework. And so tikanga, so the way in which you do things, follows specifically the kawa of Ruapotaka Marae, so the rules of Ruapotaka Marae, and their elders, their koros there, their kumatos, sorry, there. And so that's that's a very, very strong influence over how we approach our thinking and our decision making with things, and that's based in the marae there. And what's interesting with that marae is that is not an iwi based marae. That's not a family or a tribal group. It is for the community.
Wow.
So that's another part of why we're able to work together so well. TCDT is based as part of TCC, the church, Tamaki Community Church. That church is by the community for the community. Likewise, GI Family Centre is a family centre from the community for the community. Ruapotaka Marae is a marae from the community for the community. So we've all got that same thing, but we've got the different bits and pieces of culture, faith, and that family focus.
I mean, sorry. Thank you for sharing that. That's absolutely wonderful to have learned. I mean, I know you've been speaking a little bit about this during at work. I'm kind of really glad that I kind of get to understand it a little bit more. It is pretty wonderful. All the things that you've been working on, all the things that you've been helping, especially during the lockdown. Sounds to me that you've been really, really busy. And like you said, you've seen it work, and especially using kind of a different framework than the normal way that people tend to approach this charity-focused charity. And it's really good to see that there are still good things happening in the world, especially now where it seems kind of crazy, it seems kind of chaotic. I'm really happy to see that there are still great things, especially like you said, from a community's point of view. Without all of this faraway people affecting our lives, there is still good within the people around us and within the community around us. And I'm very thankful for you sharing that to us. Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Okay, I guess we get to. Is it alright if we talk a little bit more about yourself? I want to know what your hobbies are. You want to explain that?
My hobbies. Yeah. I've kind of gone into it a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a lot of hobbies. Probably too many. So one of them that I got into, I think, partly out of opportunity, but also out of annoyance with the job I had. I wanted something else to do, was education improvement. So Manaiakalani is a cluster of schools that is very much leading education improvement through using technology in better ways, along with changing pedagogy to work with that new technology. So what that means practically is you give all the kids in your classroom laptops. That means they can work differently. You don't use a laptop like you'd use your textbook. Teachers can do things like set up a schedule of all the different things the kids need to get through, and depending on the class and the kid, they can decide what they do when. And all sorts of different bits and pieces there. So that's one of my hobbies. Is I answered the call from my father-in-law to help figure out how to get laptops. It was netbooks at the time, to kids, and get that to work. When was that? ended 2010.
Oh
I think
wow,
we started that.
10 years.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, when I joke at work about how before Fusion took over Point England School, I was the person who looked after their network. Yeah, I was actually. So
That's pretty cool.
they ran out of address space because they'd had too many visitors through with getting their laptops on the Wi-Fi and run out of DHCP addresses.
Yeah.
So I was, oh, cool, Joel, he'll help us. So it's all sorts of weird and wonderful things like that, and interesting problems that I've got to play with there, which has been great exposure and great, again, more perspective, different perspectives on things, on how to do that. Um, other hobbies, I love puzzles. I love like how do you describe them? I've brought them to work
Oh,
before.
yeah, I think it's called
Like
like 3D puzzles. Like, um, I'll have an image up, but yeah, it's like one
yeah,
of those. It looks, I guess, a simple shape, but it requires
yeah.
some
So
fiddling
th-
to get them together and stuff. Yeah, or come
yeah,
apart.
so like a bunch of them date back to like, well, probably longer back, but I know them from like medieval times, like where they're sort of nails bent round and you've got to untangle them and that kind of thing. But then in more recent times, designers have come up with more interesting ones. So I'm a big fan of those. I'm a big fan of puzzle boxes.
Right.
I've got a grip box, which by the name you just got to hold it the right way to open it,
Oh wow.
and a Turkish puzzle box. I want to get a fancy Japanese puzzle box, but
Ah.
they're very expensive.
Is it like I'm just taking a blind guess, right? Is it one of those like mosaic puzzle box that you have to get
Yeah,
them correct and then you'll be able to open it?
yeah, you got to
Yeah.
like slide the little
Yep.
panels slightly this way and that way, and yeah,
Ah,
they're they're quite pricey those.
I
But
see.
I really want to get one of those. Um,
That's the one thing I
uh,
have learned, like working with Joel, is how he really loves visual things and being able to hold a problem, and that really plays like such a big part in how he works, which is something that intrigues me very much. Something that I always saw at my library back when I was in high school, but yeah, it's very cool. He bought it to me one time. Took me forever to figure out the first one. I did eventually, and then he bring
yeah.
a second one. It was like three metal pieces, easily comes apart. Had no idea how to put them back together. It was it was tragic.
Oh, was that the ring?
Yeah, I think it was like three rings. Yeah.
Yeah, yep, yeah. So supposedly there's some tradition around that that's super sexist,
Uh oh.
where uh, somewhere in Europe, I think the army men from the army would give rings to their wives, like it was their wedding ring for their wife. And the idea was that women were too stupid to be able to put
Yikes.
it back together. So that's why it's sexist, and it meant that the woman wouldn't take the ring off and cheat on them while they were away at war.
Right. That's what
Like,
I was thinking about because like being a large ring, if you take it off, it does come apart
yeah,
catastrophically and it look very hard to put back together. Oh
yeah,
no.
yeah,
Um.
they're very cool. And then I love my video games, all sorts. Favorite video game of all time is probably Pac-Man,
What?
but I play modern stuff. Uh,
Pac-Man?
yeah,
I thought it'd
Pac-Man's.
been Doom. You always talk about Doom. I thought it was Doom.
No, I'm a big fan of Doom. But I think greatest of all time is Pac-Man. You got the classics. I'm a big fan of that. Big fan of Tetris. Big fan of Doom. Um,
Tekken as well, right?
Love
Yep.
Tekken. Big into Tekken.
Very surprising.
And love my my puzzle platformers, Metroidvanias,
Right,
that
yes.
kind of
That's
thing
another thing. Like
as well.
Rayman. Do you like Rayman and stuff like that?
Oh, what was was it not Origins? What was the other one that was recent? Semi recent. Yeah, there was a Rayman one recently that was really good. Yeah,
All right,
platinum
that's
eventually.
I guess that's pretty cool. Um I guess so. This is probably a bit more different from uh what I wrote in the question, because it's usually for people who's trying to look for careers, right? I guess I'm gonna have the question on just going back to your charities. Is there anything you would like to say to the public about it? Like, I guess, are you looking for help or people, or for people to volunteer? Is this something that you'd be keen on working with other people?
Um, yeah. Yeah, so with the Te Hoe Tamaki stuff, we're still just figuring out exactly what our next steps are and how we're
Mm,
gonna work in that kind of thing. And the actual boots on the ground at the coalface and that kind of thing is more the managers. We definitely are going to be needing more people,
mm,
particularly more skilled practitioners in different areas, particularly counselling. I know there's a huge lack of counselling resource in the community at the moment.
okay, okay.
Um, yeah, yeah, that's one of the difficulties. Always got plenty of referrals and difficult to find where to send them, and like a counselor that's
Right.
appropriate as well, right?
Sorry.
Like a counselor that's appropriate for the situation and the person, right?
Oh,
Because not
really?
not
Okay.
every counselor is great for for every person,
Wow.
particularly when you're dealing with like young boys and young girls and that kind of thing. They have different approaches and open up differently to different types of people. Um,
Okay.
so that's definitely something. What I would say is just um, engage with your community
Right. Yeah.
because
It doesn't have. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sound advice.
is like there's sometimes in the suburbs and stuff you come home, you hide in your house, and then you go off
Yep.
to work somewhere else entirely. And yeah, that sort of community engagement. Keep an eye on your neighbors, make sure everything's okay.
Yep.
I know here in my street, we're friends with some of our neighbors here, and it was kind of good to just to keep tabs on each other when we were all in lockdown and all the rest of
Right.
that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I think it's that communities one of the most underrated things. I think,
Right. I think that's a
and
very.
it's incredibly powerful what you can do with community.
I think that's a takeaway for this episode. I really, really like your message. It's a very, very powerful message. Um, this is a question that I'm actually quite interested to ask you as well. Specifically, we'll leave like the career path maybe for another episode.
Yeah.
But I guess what would be, or what is your advice to yourself now, from when you were starting your charity contributions? What would have been like? What would have answered your concerns at that time? What were your thoughts when you were starting out, and how can you answer them now?
Hmm. Yes, I started out just trying to learn about how governance worked at first with it, and I'm still learning that now, and
Good answer.
particularly
I like that answer.
particularly with the collective impact with Te Hoe Tamaki and with TRC and all of that. That's uh, lots and lots of learning and lots of trying to figure everything out. Um, I think the advice for that. I don't think I'm far enough along that journey to have much good advice,
um,
really, at this stage. I mean,
no,
I know you lead from just a few
yeah,
steps ahead, but I think it's just sort of chin up, keep going.
yeah.
It's probably the best I could do.
I mean, if you ever doubt yourself 100%, well, I always say to anybody who come on here, you already took the time and to be courageous and to come on here. You're already becoming a leader to somebody who's willing to listen. So, I mean, anything you say, like you said, just keep going. I think that's valid. And you're still on your journey, and I 100% support that. That is actually a good way at looking at it. Even yeah, even from that point of view. Okay. In terms of connections, I guess would you want to put yourself out there, or would you want to put the website of this communities and charities that you're working with?
Uh, yeah. So I'm not really on social
Yep,
media at
that's
all.
okay.
I do have a LinkedIn. Um, Other than that, I don't really do that. Te Hoe Tamaki's website is currently a stub.
Okay.
Um, what is it? I can't even remember what it is. I'd have to look it up. Hold on a sec. It does. There is there not a YouTube. There is a. I think there's a Facebook group
Okay.
that I think Moana's doing some good stuff with for it.
Okay.
But I don't have the details of that currently. I'd need to get that for you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Throw all, I guess, all the links of what we've spoken about that you'd be interested with me sharing to the public, and we'll have it up there.
sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Joel. I am very, very happy and grateful for you to come on to our episode of To the Sky.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. I guess I wouldn't keep you much longer. Thank you for all your time.